The cost of electric vehicles of all types has dropped to quite a bit over the last few years, including the Class 8 semi-tractors you see barreling down the highway. So I'm going to talk to Claire Buysse, who is with the International Council on Clean Transportation, about a blog post she recently wrote about the cost of semi-electric trucks. So welcome to the interview, Claire.
Yeah, thank you so much. Happy to be here.
Well, I'm really interested in this because, it wasn't that long ago that electric was almost out of the long haul equation. Hydrogen was seen as the eventual fuel that would displace diesel. And all of a sudden that's changed in a couple of years. It looks like now that these trucks are becoming more competitive.
Yeah, absolutely. I think battery electric, especially because of electrification on the light duty side, that technology has moved a lot faster. It's a little bit more advanced, and hydrogen is still in development. And so that lead time that battery electric has gotten kind of on hydrogen has carried over into the heavy duty vehicle space. And so that's kind of what we're seeing now, is that electrification, some applications are ready, and especially for some of these medium duty applications like home delivery. We've seen a lot about Amazon delivery trucks becoming electric, and things like that, like UPS and US Postal Service. And long haul is maybe the most extreme version with those semi trucks. And there's the big focus on electrification at ports, which is a huge environmental justice concern. And so that's one reason that big semis are getting a lot of attention as well.
Right. Now, in your blog post, you compared the capital cost, the purchase price of electric trucks and hydrogen trucks versus diesel trucks. What did you find?
I found that battery electric right now is approaching break-even prices. So I looked at the costs in 2020 and projections out to 2025 and 2030. And these are based actually on some estimates, bottom-up estimates from Ricardo Strategic Consulting, and they are often used in the automotive industry, and so we really trust their numbers. And so we put in our own specs and used their numbers to come up with estimates, and found hydrogen costs are going to come down, but battery electric are coming down a little bit faster. And by 2030, the purchase price is going to be pretty close to that of a diesel powertrain.
Now, the numbers you had on the high end, you had a Peterbilt at 510,000 for a purchase price of an electric semi. You've got Lion Electric at about 400,000. Tesla, of course, has been advertising for a while now their electric semi, which would be down around 180,000. So did you use the Tesla numbers, or did you use the higher numbers from the other manufacturers?
We actually, somewhere in between is the answer. So those numbers that you just quoted from those suppliers, those are estimates that we can make based on announcements that have gone out about truck purchases, but those aren't numbers that are necessarily what is being charged. Those are our best guesses because those numbers really aren't disclosed. And so what we did was try to put actual numbers to the kinds of trucks that are out on the market. So we chose generic, like middle of the road specs, being like battery size and horsepower, et cetera, and made a bottom-up estimate, and then added kind of like a markup cost to get to the retail manufacturing price. And we definitely found higher than Tesla, and lower than some of those other numbers from the press releases. And it's hard to say what exactly is going in those, and that's the value of our own estimates.
Right. So what you found, if I'm reading this correctly, is in 2020, electric will be 2.8 times the purchase price of a diesel, a regular diesel. In 2025, it'll be 1.9, and by 2030, it'll be only 1.5 times. Hydrogen is much higher, 3.8 times in 2020, 2.8 in 2025, and 1.7 in 2030. Mm-hmm. So it looks like the decline in costs that we see on the light duty side are replicating themselves in the on the heavy duty, on at least for electric.
Yeah, very much so. And I will add on the diesel side, so more conventional trucks, those costs are increasing slightly, and that's a result of regulations that require more efficient engines or low NOx engines. I know the EPA is working on a low NOx regulation as we speak. That will add just some small costs to the diesel. So that cost is actually going up slightly while battery electric and hydrogen are going down and becoming a little bit more attractive from an upfront cost perspective.
Right, and you assume that the diesel prices would not follow or not be as high as they are now in sort of the, I guess after Russia invaded Ukraine and the supply crunches that we've had, your diesel prices in your model were a little closer to historic norms, I gather.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's correct. So when you add in fuel costs, before we were just talking about upfront, and when you add in fuel costs and savings from maintenance, that's where battery electric really shines because those prices are stable and they're pretty low, and especially with increasing costs of diesel fuel, makes that argument even stronger.
Yeah, that's what really surprised me. Looking at your numbers in 2020, just in 2025, and we're only talking 3 years from now, the battery electric costs only have to come down about 15% in order to be competitive with diesel. And so it looks like electric is going to be competitive a lot quicker than we had thought.
Yeah, I think that's the right framing, is that it will be competitive. There is a really important caveat here, though, which is infrastructure availability. So we can't start taking advantage of that unless there is charging available and on the ground. And that's a huge holdup for the biggest trucks that need really high power charging. They can't use the light duty infrastructure that's already available. But yeah, these like commercial trucks will drive a lot more than a passenger vehicle because they're doing service all day. And the way to bring costs down for a battery electric is to drive more because your savings are with fuel. So if you're driving more, the economic case is stronger.
Right. Last year, I interviewed a representative of a trucking association. He was arguing that the industry is moving to a regional transportation model. So his thinking was that the long haul trucks, the trucks that are going for, I don't know how many hundreds of miles they would drive in a day, but those would remain diesel at least for quite a while. But they would come into hubs, and then from the hubs out to the ultimate destination, those would be electric. That the economics favored electric at that time. What's your take on that?
I think definitely the most electrifiable segments or vehicle types and routes are those shorter ones. So this regional focus, definitely like short drayage runs or anything that's urban delivery, even if it's with a semi, and those long haul routes that are like cross state boundaries are going to require some serious infrastructure, and whether that is charging infrastructure or hydrogen fueling infrastructure, I think the jury is still out. I think there's a lot of momentum on both sides, and time will tell, I think, how both technology develops and also how our public dollars are incentivizing some of that development. So I think there's still a choice to make. And maybe that's, I wouldn't even say a choice. I think there's probably opportunity for both, and different companies, different fleets will choose the solution that works for them.
Right. I mean, it makes sense because generally when new technologies are introduced, they're not economic for everybody immediately. They're economic for different types of adopters at different points in the adoption, in the S curve. And it sounds like, for heavy duty, it's going to follow that classic S curve. There'll be some early ones already. And then as time goes on, more and more, and, they'll climb up and sales will increase. And we'll see, in 5 years, I notice, by 2030, the purchase price for your battery electric, I mean, it comes down significantly. That seems like by that time, battery electric will have a clear cost advantage over diesel. And then maybe at that point, we'll see a mass adoption within the industry.
Yeah, that's definitely what we expect based on these kind of cost projections. And we're working on convincing policymakers that they should be requiring that, and to bring our emissions down and to clean up some of our communities, some of the air pollution in our communities. And yeah, I think it's coming. It's coming is the answer. And I think it will be a matter of making sure everyone's prepared, and that we have the right tools. And I think the first step is getting fleets experience with electric trucks. And that's starting to happen already on, like I mentioned, some of those medium duty applications. And once they're comfortable, I think it's going to pick up quickly.
Great. Claire, thank you very much for this. Really appreciate your insights.
Yeah, absolutely.